Over the last year and a half, a lot of us who work in offices have gone remote.
Many employees like working from home.
Remote work was the hip word of 2020.
Several industries, including banking and tech, are open to the idea of working from home.
I think remote work is here to stay for a lot of people.
Months earlier, Facebook announced that within 10 years, roughly half of its employees will likely work from home.
So we're going to need better tools to work together.
Microsoft Mesh.
The metaverse.
Altspace VR, spatial.
How to build a productivity system, and the first question to start with is, why do you in fact need a productivity system? And really the main reason is so that we can do the stuff that we want to do, we can do things that are meaningful to us in an efficient way without wasting our time, and so that we're less stressed out doing it, because then we don't have to rely on our brain to do things that it's not designed to do.
The nature of work is changing along with the concept of what and where an office of the future will be. And one of the many crucial elements giving direction to this transition are user experience researchers, who help make what some consider a dystopic future a lot more human-centric. On this episode, we are joined by two such user experience researchers who are in the thick of this transition, sharing what they think. This is Design Over Breakfast.
Meenakshi, you've been studying mobile productivity and how we work online and things like that. How do you think productivity tools have changed over time?
I think that's a super relevant question now. I think the pandemic has made us almost, it's witnessing history, but also making it's happening so fast. Things are changing in front of us. These kind of changes would have regularly happened over a couple of years, little by little. It wouldn't even be something that we are realizing now. Even if you take something as simple as video calling, we now know all the tools that are available for video calling. We now know all the features that all the tools have. We know how to digitally raise our hands or scribble on a whiteboard together. Even the fact that we're in this call having a genuine conversation, looking at each other, it took practice, and that's how fast things have changed in the pandemic. And the biggest thing that has influenced productivity tools is that we have shifted to doing everything digitally. We did work with digital tools, no doubt about it. We had our laptops with us all the time, but we used to block something on our calendar, but we'd physically go to a meeting room, chat about things, then maybe we'd scribble something on a notebook that we then reference later, things like that. Now, every single interaction, every single thing is digital. We're getting all our information in that format. We are scheduling our lives digitally. We are communicating digitally, and the work is all happening digitally. Not to say that there are people who don't physically work. That's how our public transportation systems are working. That's how our governments are working. So, of course, this is not the context for every person, but this has greatly influenced how people imagine work. So now it's very, very easy, acceptable to say attend someone's wedding online, which we know, being Indians and knowing the value of weddings and how big a fanfare it is, it would have been just a big no, just not imaginable for anyone. But today we can, and that is the kind of influence that this digitization has had on everything that we do, including work and including productivity tools. So I think now people are expecting something already from these tools. So earlier you would have been fine if things are not syncing. Maybe you log in again from your computer, maybe you log in from your phone, you have 5 different apps for the same thing. Now that's no longer acceptable because you've seen that it can all be combined together. You can see that it can seamlessly work on the cloud. You can have a mobile application, make a change in a file here and then see that reflect online instantly. Or you can see that someone else is making a change in a Word file while you have dropped a comment there, and they can interact with your content in real time. And now that has become a norm, and the pandemic has really pushed these expectations because of the kind of exposure people have had to technology in general in this time. The pandemic has just fast-tracked a lot of things. So how productivity tools will change over time, I think, is people's base expectations from these tools will be to be smart, to be seamless across different platforms. They will expect productivity tools to meet them where they are. So if I want to answer an email while I'm on the ski slope, or if I want to answer an email while I'm trying to get to a client meeting with a short commute, or when I'm trying to do my laundry, it has to be there. Because if it's not, you're missing out. And if it's not, you're not meeting people when they're trying to be productive. So it's not just the 9 to 5 when you're sitting in front of your desk where you're, oh, this is what productivity is and this is what being productive means. People, leaders, interns, everyone is trying to have these pockets of time when they do their work, and the tools will have to come and see them where they are and cater to these needs that people have. And yeah, it's going to have to be a reliable system, not just a tool, which helps them get multiple things done at the same time, so that you don't have 10 different applications sending you 10 different notifications, bombarding you with their information and wanting your eyeballs and wanting you to use it. You have to find something that works for you, that's going to keep your things safe, not delete your work by mistake, things like that. So it's all going to have to meet people where they are, be across platforms, be seamless in that space, and just help them be productive when they imagine being productive, instead of just being a thing that they interact with when they are at work, which used to be the norm earlier. So I think that is the space that tools need to go in. And I think the pandemic and the way people were like, why can't I see everyone's face when I'm on a Teams call? Those kind of pushes have really made the people creating these products be like, yeah, why not? We need to build for this. And then you quickly run and make this possible so that people can have more productive meetings and interactions in their day.
Like productivity before used to be like, I want to get this work done, I want to get this stuff finished off my to-do list. Now I feel that the definition of productivity is changing to not just completing tasks, but also to make intentional choices towards the task and the goal. So the choice of, I want to push this to somebody else, I want to finish this or complete this today, or I want to just not do it. And that is what I feel productivity tools should really focus on, is giving your users that opportunity to be flexible, and also to give the opportunity to customize things their own way according to their own lifestyle. Because post-pandemic we realized that nothing is going to be linear. Our life is going to keep changing, it's going to keep evolving, our lifestyle will change, and that is why productivity tools need to evolve along with it. Initially productivity tools were supposed to be only functional. They're supposed to be only helping us edit something or reply to a comment or mark some tickets completed, and they all looked a certain way. To an extent, if I'm not mistaken, it's boring to some people. We wouldn't spend more time on a productivity tool for longer hours, right? But now, because of this transition where people are spending more time on these tools, there is a shift from just being functional to looking good, to be giving that visual delight to the user, and to being intuitive. Because sometimes I am on, say, a Word file or a Google Doc, and I'm like, where is that tool? And now, and they are going to work towards helping the users find that tool, be more intuitive. That's the shift of productivity tools at this moment post-pandemic.
But do you feel like the socializing aspect is currently missing in these productivity tools, let's say with Teams or let's say with Notion? So that human-to-human conversation is missing?
Yes, of course it's missing. I mean, it's missing because the whole thing is, obviously it's getting the task done. It's getting it done well in time. But you're actually cutting off that basic human behavior that we had. That doesn't go to say that these tools are not working out. They are definitely just substituting the need for the hour, because we needed everyone to be virtual. We cannot go to offices. We cannot do this in person. So that I feel that they're really solving at hand. Now, if you want to make it more interactive, more collaborative, make it feel like, I am still in office if I'm sitting at home. That's what the metaverse is. That's what I assume it is, right? So that can happen, but you do need to research more about what is that core human behavior that was there, what was linked to reviewing, for example. What is the core human behavior in reviewing? Someone gives you a feedback, then you be like, thank you so much for this feedback, and you go and solve the feedback. Now that can't happen in person. So now what you do, you leave a comment on the Word document and someone replies to the comment, they mark the comment resolved. If you want to still add this human factor, say in some metaverse, in office space that you're designing, the behavior still remains the same. I still want to get feedback, I still want to resolve that feedback, but the medium is changing. So your medium, which is the metaverse or which is this, which is a Word document, needs to adapt to that core or the crux of that human behavior that was there. Now, how it does it, you need to go research and understand what makes that behavior special. That's what we say. There is no end to a product getting evolved. It keeps evolving as and when the technology keeps expanding. And now it's like on the zenith of being expansion of technology right now with metaverse coming in.
So is the goal now, the next step with productivity tools is to make it less mechanical? It's so optimized for work to be done that now people are starting to disassociate social life and work. So they literally log off from work. Every company that's working towards these virtual tools, virtual productivity tools, do you think that that's what their singular goal is? All of them are competing. There's a race towards who can get to getting the best social experience onto these productivity tools. Metaverse is coming, but also Microsoft Teams is giving competition because they're introducing, avatars and immersive meetings. Do you think that that's what the industry, that's what the next step in making these productivity tools optimized for work? Do you think that that's what the goal is?
I think it's one aspect of it, and it's purely like what Cydelle was saying. You're trying to see what people's natural behavior is and what their actual goals as well as their intentions are. So if their intention is to have a natural conversation with someone or with a group of people, then that is the goal that the product should try and solve. That need not be the goal for every single product, and every need that we have, even from the digital products around us, it is also learned in some ways. For instance, if you think about, I think Cydelle and I were discussing this earlier, where now with children studying digitally, there's 4-year-olds or 7-year-olds who are learning how to use digital documents, who are learning how to make presentations, where when we were kids, we used to have one lesson per week to go to a computer lab and do something on Microsoft Paint or something like that. So now if you imagine these same people, say a decade or two from now, that's going to be their base, the foundation of knowledge that they have about digital tools. So their expectations will go from there and beyond. And some expectations might be, I want to work with someone as seamlessly as it would be to work sitting right next to them. But again, the difference is from, say, getting physical documents in files and having to sign them versus getting 5 emails and just quickly stamping your digital signature on it and being done with it. Things are happening faster, people are getting more productive, these stop becoming tasks that they need to do as a part of their day or spend a lot of time on. So I think every productivity tool has certain goals that it's trying to meet. A lot of it is based on where is technology today, what are people trying to achieve today, and then they try to build experiences that help them achieve, their users achieve those goals. And yeah, this may very well be a goal, especially given that some companies may never go back to working physically ever again. Or there might still be circumstances where we've never contemplated doing things digitally, but now we do. For instance, if we have a concert and we want 1 million people to come in, even if the arena doesn't have that kind of capacity, how do we introduce these experiences? So given what you're trying to achieve with that, this might be one of the goals. And a lot of the features that you see today are inspired from how we work normally. If this technology was not there, and now we're learning how to use technology, we are adjusting how we work according to it, so it's going to influence each other as we go. And we can see more and more of that. Even like Cydelle was saying, if we think about the metaverse, then there'll be different barriers that come up then. Maybe it's, I don't want to wear a tool to be able to visualize this. Then how can it be made easier and more natural? So I think it's all the behavior is affected by the products and the technology. The technology is affected by the changing behavior, and it just goes from there for pretty much everything we interact with.
Before it used to be the file has to now be physically signed, then if it's a weekend then the file is not going to reach a particular place, then it has to be sent back to the person intended to be sent. But now it's a digital document. You could in real time see people updating Google Drive files and all of this stuff. This completely sped up the pace at which work was happening. So people are still working in an office, but these tools are kind of really that because that's what people needed. They wanted work to be done quickly, they wanted things to, because always work has to be done fast. So these were things that were welcome, nobody questioned. Now the same thing they're providing in a virtual environment. So what are we looking forward to with the metaverse, or even with what Microsoft now they're presenting with I guess Microsoft Mesh?
Not all, but most companies are trying to find this sweet spot of this productivity tool to solve for the user's goal, but also the main purpose of completing a task or completing your goal is that you can get your personal time. So you want to find that balance, with the work-life balance that we talk about. And I think most of the productivity tools are looking from that perspective as well. How can we let that balance happen? Now, one way of doing that, like I spoke about, is giving control to the user itself. I want to complete this tool. The tool knows what it needs to complete, throws a little bit of procedures for it, and then the person responds, and the work is done. The second thing, with machine learning coming in the picture, we see that tools are learning what we are doing. They learn what we are trying to achieve. There are tools like Grammarly that helps us to write better. I have not written a mail without Grammarly for the past few weeks right now. But also with all of these coming into picture, I feel this additional learning and understanding that's required to develop like a trustworthy and a secure, like ethical machine learning approach, where we are using these large data sets, but we're also preserving privacy. This is another focus that these tools need to have. We need to understand that this should be used in a very ethical manner, in a manner that we are preserving safety and security as well. And what you mentioned, Prateyush, the last thing that I want to say is that people actively engaging in a productivity tool also means that leads to fatigue. So that's what productivity tools are working towards, that we are not going to make this user get tired of what we are using. Like there are so many apps on the phone that I'm glued on my phone. That was not the reason I got my phone in the first place. It was to call maybe my family and tell them where I am. But now I'm just glued onto it, and we don't want that to happen. So that is why we need to understand how these tools are influencing people in the right way and in the wrong way, and how do we solve for both to reach that sweet spot in the first place. And I think all productivity tools are looking into that for now.
One thing I reflect on here is something that Cydelle was also mentioning about what information is being collected about people, the privacy issues that people have. And I think there are some technologies out there that we'd probably not considered this for. Or maybe the experts had considered this, but laymen had not. And now that we're in this universe, now that our own information is being utilized to push products out to us, to sell more things to us, we now take a step back and realize that, I don't know if I want that to happen or not. And the same kind of thought process, I believe, should happen when these kind of technologies are being built. So one thing is, how do people behave today and how do we cater to that? Another one is, how would people behave in the future, or what is culture moving towards, or what could our company influence, and how can we change the way people do work? We would not have even contemplated or imagined having this supercomputer in our hands, which was like a smartphone, but now we do. And we've seen effects of that. So what I would hope happens is we do some reflection, some studying of what could be the different effects of technology like this entering our workspace, our lives, the way we do things, our human culture as a whole. And then taking certain steps to mitigate that already. I think a lot of times we've let things expand a lot and then looked at the consequences. I think knowing what we know today, having the kind of experts that we have, it's imperative that organizations do the work in advance before these kind of tools are built. It's something that should be considered while these things are being built. So I'm not sure. I can't really say what the world is moving towards. I hope we don't have a pandemic-like situation, but who knows what else happens, you know. So given that could be the reality, I feel like when you're building technologies, even now, certain features that we make, we always think about, listen, no, that is not right. It's just not right. We could make it, people could like it, people could use it, but does this really affect people negatively in the long run? If it does, should we do things to mitigate this? And I think that kind of thing needs to come into the practice of building products in general, and I would say it should be done for these technologies as well, which may be in our near future, maybe in the distant, but they're getting built, they're out there. So yeah, that is something that I think about.
Why do we have to have a place like a metaverse where you have these avatars, you have a 3D rendition of something that the office provided you 2 years back? Why are we looking forward to a digital space for working?
How the work from home culture has like blown out during the pandemic. Obviously, it didn't help everyone. A lot of us preferred going to office, having that human interaction. But it did help a lot of small businesses, a lot of early startups, because they couldn't afford having resources in the office. They couldn't afford having the offices itself. And all of this closing down, permanently shutting down, having people in their own workspace yet being productive, I felt that really helped them to maintain the steady business that they have. That's one example. I can't think of any more. I think the metaverse can also help these kind of things where there is no physical space to go back to. We can't afford a physical space to go back to, and maybe we want to invest all the capital that we have in manpower, in our projects, in things that in tools and technology that can help our projects, rather than investing it in a physical space or in stationary resources, which takes up a lot of money. A lot of money goes in it. So the metaverse can help in that. But that being said, what Meenakshi also spoke about is the metaverse being inclusive to everyone? That is what we need to question as well. You cannot say that these small businesses cannot be on this in this program, or we exclude people who face a certain challenges with technology. We exclude people who face a certain challenge with accessibility, because a lot of these video conference applications changed. They all started supporting closed captions after everything went work from home. Everything started changing. Virtual backgrounds started coming in because I didn't want to show my home to people. So a lot of things started happening post-pandemic. That needs to be. So we have to take the example of the pandemic and see how things changed, and then use the same examples, the same change in behavior when we look into a metaverse like this, and keeping in mind that we are ethical as well. But obviously, we can't expect that everyone will move to the metaverse in one go. That shift is not going to happen easily. I would still prefer going to an office. I'm that kind of a person. I would not prefer being in a metaverse and working. That's just a personal opinion. So there might be many people who are thinking like that. So that is something that we need to think about. Is this really required? Is this the need of the hour at this moment or not? For us to move to these productivity tools, it took an oddity like a pandemic to happen. Otherwise, we were not using it the way it was supposed to be used. So there needs to be a big trigger to take that entire change of audience to the other side, and also give them a satisfactory and yet secured experience.
So speaking of accessibility, I have a question for you, Cydelle. I'm sure there are a lot of small companies who do not have the bandwidth or the resources to dive deep into research when it comes to accessibility and inclusion, and this is something we experienced as students as well. We would do the surface level things, but then beyond that we had that restriction of resources or just even the timeline to be able to dive deep into these topics beyond a certain point. But do you think there are some workarounds to this issue that can help people?
We can just give our example of when we were in college. I don't think we fully understood the purpose or the intent of doing research. What we behaved was like we used to go find a problem which we thought it was a problem, and then we used to directly dive into solving for it. We really didn't go one step ahead to understand what the problem is. Is it just a hypothesis or an assumption we have, or does it actually exist, and are there majority of people facing this problem? What is the user behavior? What are the workarounds that users have when they face these challenges? We hardly accounted for behavior, cultural types, that the nuances that are there in different backgrounds. And I totally agree with the fact that some of these things is difficult to do at a university level. But the problem that we had at that point of time was we were not aware about it. Like, our awareness lacked so much that we did not read up, we did not know how to do it. And these are some of the challenges that current startups are also facing. That I understand they don't have the funds to do the research. I know that they do not have the manpower to do the research. But what I'm trying to tell people is you need to be aware of what you have let go on at that point of time. Know that and be open to it. That I have not done the research. Maybe once this project, once we start getting certain kind of funding, or once we start making some kind of money, we can invest in this in a later stage. That awareness needs to be there. And sometimes it's like we don't have the bandwidth for it. It's fine. We also face these issues where we cannot do research at this point of time, and the product just has to get launched due to a goal we want to meet, or a checklist we want to complete. But we always make it a point to put that in some format in our notes or in our after action reports, as we call it. This thing was not tested. This thing was not considered, and we will get back to it. We have to get back to it. Sometimes when it comes to research, if someone asks me are users aware about this product that we're going to launch? And I'm like, I can't gauge awareness with a prototype. This product has to go out in the market. It has to be out, and then I will gauge awareness. So these constraints that you as a researcher have, like whether you don't have the bandwidth, you can't test it because of the kind of environment you're in, or you don't have researchers for it, or you don't have money for it. Research is one expensive job. So if you don't have these things, you need to consider these constraints and note them down somewhere so that you can get back to it on a later stage. So I feel small businesses, they can really go ahead if they really face some issues like that. Try and put the product out in the market, and then probably focus on research when they have the time, when they have the funds, and all other factors that contribute to research as well. I also feel that accessibility in general also costs a lot. Unfortunately, to have certain assistive technologies, like if you say screen readers, like there are JAWS, there is NVDA, which are there for different PCs and OS that you're using. If you are using that, you need to pay a bomb for it, right? If you're using a keyboard for the visually impaired, that keyboard costs around $25,000. It is not cheap, and that is the reason why many people are struggling with accessibility, because they don't have the basics of it. To invest in that keyboard is far-fetched. To invest in those products, you cannot do it right now. Okay, but try at least being inclusive at this point of time. You don't have to do it. There's no second thinking. If you're talking to males, go talk to females. If you're talking to this age group, if your product has a certain age group, try to accommodate everything. If you're talking to, say, a working professional, go talk to a homemaker as well, because they might be using a food delivery app, they might be using documents, maybe a working professional might be using it for his job, but a homemaker might be using a document for maybe the kids' homework. Who knows? So you need to account for different types of users. You need to accommodate for different cultures and even socio-economic backgrounds. You cannot do your inclusive research with just people in Bangalore who are very tech savvy. You need to go one step ahead and go to those tier 2, tier 3 cities and try to figure out how they are using the product, because your product is accessible everywhere, right? Accessibility you can keep to when you think you have the right knowledge about it, you have the right fund to support it, but inclusion can start now. That can happen right now, right away. I mean, you cannot say no to inclusion right now. But if you think that you are not an expert in accessibility, there are experts in the market who can talk about it. So you have these people who audit apps and websites. So for Swiggy, we had audited our app and website by an accessibility auditing group. It's an agency, and they went through it doing, this is not according to the accessibility standards. The government has standards. There is a worldwide accessibility standards that people need to follow, and they will audit and send you a report saying that this all doesn't work, and this is all you need. This is the thing that you need to focus on. That also can happen if you don't have in-house experts, if you can't focus on in-house experts at this moment. So these are small ways that you can accommodate accessibility and inclusion. It shouldn't be like very drastic step. I've seen the difference from working in Swiggy versus coming to Adobe. Adobe, being a large organization, can afford to focus on accessibility. I'm very grateful about it. But back in Swiggy, that wouldn't happen. So that is something that the organization's position decides later on, and something that the organization takes a conscious call that this is not what we can afford right now, but we will have it in mind. We will solve for it at some point of time, and that's a great way to start.
I was reflecting back on how you were thinking about what students would do, or how the research that they do might not be that in depth. And I think one thing that you can do as students to make your research a little bit more in depth, I think, is not just to find out certain problems and run with it, but reflecting back on who are you trying to collect these set of problems from, reflecting on, is the problem really this? Is it something else that I'm not seeing? Is there something else that is determined by the context in which people answered? Maybe you need to go observe how people use these things. So there was an internship where I was designing furniture, and we had conversations around, okay, so how are people storing their stationery here, and asking people this versus actually seeing 10 different styles in which people store their physical things around them. It was a complete game changer, and it is not difficult to do if you're a student and if you've chosen certain topics where you can access these kind of location, these kind of people, and it helps a lot to dig a little bit, one level deeper into, I see this problem, why does this occur? Maybe there is something that you are not seeing in the problem that is causing the problem in the first place, and then your solution instantly becomes that much more useful. And hopefully once you're in the industry, you have resources to do this even more in depth. You have the resources to account for different cultures, different people, include people and how they use it. And another tip for students is, don't just stop there, don't just start with a problem, solve for it and be done with it. Once you have a solution to that problem, test the solution as well. Maybe the solution, the form that it's taken with your design is not exactly how it should be. Or what Cydelle is talking about, accessibilities. If you're thinking about physical products, that can really be put to the test very, very easily. It's as simple as, okay, if someone is using this thing one-handed when they have to, it could be because they're carrying something while they're doing this. Maybe they're trying to operate something on their door while they're also trying to bring in some luggage, things like that. Or maybe they've broken their arm. It's temporary, but they're still unable to do something with two arms. So those kind of things, testing these things very quickly with whatever resources you have, helps you improve on that idea that you have, helps you improve the solution that you have, and it takes it beyond, this is my design, look at it in all its glory, versus, oh, this is how people use it, this is where it could improve, and potentially if I have the opportunity to build this out, this is how I would do things differently. I think that adds a level of depth that you really can't achieve just sitting in one place and then contemplating what should happen and just executing it right then and there.
Yeah, because I think what we are great at doing is focusing on the users we are targeting, but we don't really often put it forward, who are we leaving out. And I think it's important to be conscious of who are we leaving out. I mean, if you think that this is something that you cannot solve for right now, be conscious about it. I mean, there's no harm in showing that this is something that it's a missed opportunity right now. But to be conscious of who you're leaving out, it's important to read up on the kind of the spectrum of people that are there. Accessibility, if I talk to a layman, they will always think about someone with a permanent disability. It doesn't have to be permanent. Like someone has maybe lost an arm, can be a mother taking care of a child and one arm is occupied, versus someone who's fractured the arm itself. So there are different ways of being of marking or highlighting accessibility. Also there is invisible disabilities that no one talks about. Like you are disabled if I can see you're disabled. That's a very stupid thing to think right now. You can have an invisible disability, like you can have dyslexia for that matter. So those things are not really visual, but they are there, and those are the things you need to cater to and at least be intentional, be aware, be mindful, and show it out. If you're designing, if you're in design school, if you're designing for like say this target user, be mindful and say this is the people who can benefit out of this product, but I have not considered them right now, but I would love to at some stage of mine, and that's what I'm going to keep at the back of my mind if I want to improve this product and take it like one level extra.
And since we're almost towards the end of this episode, I just have one more question to ask both of you. How do you see research growing in the future?
That's a good question. A lot of the answers might be, we hope this happens. But in general, I think maybe everyone can see that the field is getting larger, and because it's getting larger, more people are entering it. It's also being done for various levels, for various kinds of products and services, and it's getting more influential. And it's a tipping point where technology is growing and research has this opportunity to influence what happens with this technology, because now we're aware that research is useful and researchers are a valuable asset to have, and now you can push it even further. You can define what products should be, how should they be, how are people using it, how is cultural effects having some sort of influence on how people might be using things, and just make the experience better for people. So I think that place of influence is also helping researchers advocate for other things that might not have been considered, like accessibility, like inclusion, bringing those conversations up. It might not happen in practice instantly, but having people who are constantly in touch with the real human beings who are utilizing products in the real world, it really helps to have that place of influence and then be able to have these conversations, building on that culture of research within an organization, regardless of what kind of role you play. That is, I think, we constantly discuss this, we're both hoping this happens, and we can see inklings, we can see some instances of that already happening, and it's extremely exciting to be in the field at the moment.
When me and Meenakshi started off our research journey, we had to write solo. There was no research leadership as such that we could learn from, or we could look up to, or who could think about our growth. Now, fortunately, because of the organizations we are associated to, we have that person in place. But there are many organizations, companies, startups that don't have that leadership, and I feel that now, because like Meenakshi said, the field is getting larger, people understand the impact of research, they will be focusing more on having that leadership of a research leadership, because eventually, no matter what you're doing at the ground level, somewhere those insights, somewhere all the learnings has to reach the executive level. Now that is if you're at the ground level, it's very difficult for you to go one step higher and go to the executive table and say that this is what we learned, this is what we need to do. And that's where leadership plays an important role, because that leader is making sure that those voices are being heard even to the executives, because they are the final decision makers in the organization. They have to take the call. So that is why I see research going to have this leadership. I think a lot of organizations focusing on, say, more experienced researchers, more senior researchers, I've seen job opportunities for directors and VPs and research. So I know that the trend is shifting, but saying that, I feel that, if we only focus on seniors and if we only focus on VPs and design, which is great, it's great to have an executive, but we're not focusing on the juniors, we're not focusing on interns. Now you see a lot of design internships, you see a lot of associate designer roles. I don't see the similar happening for research. I feel that needs to happen because at the end of the day, we might just be left with a lot of seniors and no freshers, or we might just be left with a lot of leads and not have any seniors. So we really need to be open to inviting freshers into the field where we have some because they also need to learn from someone. The organization needs to grow, and we also need to grow. Someone has to come and join our place. So that is why I want that trend to shift as well. But leadership is growing in research so far, so that's great.
Yeah, and just conversations like these, I think, help contribute to educating more people, maybe opening up people's minds about, oh, you know what, design has so many different aspects to it, or user experience has so many different aspects that I could maybe fit into, I have the skill set for. That's why we do this. We started collaborating together to do workshops and talks, podcasts like these, just have conversations where we're talking about what we do. Maybe someone is interested in it. We didn't have anyone sharing actively what they learned from their experience, so we thought maybe whatever little we know, let's articulate that, let's share that with people, so that maybe in that exchange we also learn something. In that process of articulation, we also think back, we reflect on what we've done, and we have this way of giving back, way of creating some sort of community around what we do. And I'm so glad to know that your podcast invited us, getting interested in this topic, and we've seen similar things happen across, and it's, like I said, it's an interesting time because of this. And if people are interested, they should definitely look more into what the industry is like, speak to researchers like Cydelle and I. We constantly are people send us messages, we try to tell us what does a day in our life look like, and that can help people understand where they could fit in, or maybe they understand this is not the role for them, but at least they have some awareness that these could be different things that happen in the industry. And yeah, that just makes the profession grow even further. It's a great field, people. Yeah, it's also been our intention to keep it as open and understandable as possible.
But if you do come across any jargons and you feel that you need to clarify it, you can just reach out to us. We'll clarify it.
Yes, please do.
So I think both of us are active on LinkedIn a lot. So that will be the best channel to reach out to us for anything related to research.
Guessing our full names would be there with the podcast, so just search for that in LinkedIn. You see some happy smiling faces in the DP, that's us.
We might not see it a lot, but we are definitely a little active on Twitter as well. So if you can reach out to us on Twitter, we might just answer to you.
So please do reach out if you have questions.
Yes.
If this conversation gave you some value, please consider subscribing and liking for more such content. Comment below topics you would like us to delve into, and we will try to cover them. Thank you for now, and see you next time.